When it comes to shooting real estate videos, do you really need to shoot in 4K or is 1080p enough? What should your turnaround time be? Should you leave the lights on or off when it comes to shooting real estate photo or video? Welcome to another episode of Answering Your Questions, where I answer comments from my YouTube videos related to real estate photo and video, gear, editing, business, and much more. So let's get into it right now. Okay, so jumping into question number 1. Do you think 4K video is required for someone starting out in real estate photography and videography in 2023 going into 2024? Really good question, and required? No. But should you? Depends. I think it depends on the formats that you're delivering. So funny enough, most newer cameras have way sharper and nicer looking 1080p than older cameras. For example, when I used to shoot real estate video on my 5D Mark IV 3 to 4 years ago, the 1080p was not that sharp. Even the 4K was really hard to shoot on there and it didn't look that great, versus when I got my R6 and now shooting on the R6 Mark II, the 1080p in there looks really nice. Almost looks sharper than the 4K from older cameras, and especially 1080 from that older one. So personally, I would do some experimenting. If you're at a property, do a couple of clips both in 4K and 1080, drop them onto your timeline, export those videos, and see if you can justify that extra storage 4K files are gonna take up. For me personally, I shoot everything in 4K on my Canon R6 Mark II because it's downsampled from the 6K sensor and it looks incredible. And personally, I do want the sharpest resolution because of the reformatting we do for vertical videos. So if you plan to make some vertical edits from your real estate videos that are shot horizontally to be formatted vertically, I definitely recommend shooting in 4K because it's going to retain the quality and still look good when you're punched in vertically to the center of that frame. Now, if you exclusively shoot vertically or actually shoot your content vertically on a gimbal, that's different. It's already in that format, so I don't think you're gonna have to deal with reformatting, and 1080p is probably gonna look great. But me personally, because we do both versus reformatting clips for vertical or actually shooting vertically or vice versa, plus I just love the quality that comes out of this camera, I personally want the highest quality, and we do a bunch of luxury property work where I think that is probably more required. So I would say it just depends. Like I said, try it out for yourself. But on the flip side, if you're primarily a real estate photographer and then you do a little bit of video, for example, those videos only get attached to the listing, not really on social media or anything like that, then 1080p is probably fine. So if you're reformatting your content from horizontal videos, definitely shoot in 4K. It's gonna look a lot better and not fall apart. And honestly, just try it out yourself and see if it's worth having to deal with extra storage. Question number 2, what's your turnaround time for videos like this? So when I first started out and I was doing real estate videos and doing everything on my own, I told my clients it would take around 2 to 3 business days, because right from the beginning when I started learning how to do these videos, they were luxury higher end properties. So I still put the same amount of work that I do into them, but they're a lot better now. But my point being that I personally would still treat it like a high-end video project, not just a walkthrough video or a quick scan of the home. So it took me a lot of time in editing. So that's why I would promise them 2 to 3 business days max turnaround, even though I think that's crazy fast, especially because I was coming from the wedding industry and doing other types of video work where you can promise your clients a month, 2 months, and have plenty of time to come back and sit down, do revisions, and just take your time on the edit. But that's definitely not the case in the real estate world, and we all know that. But if you're coming from another industry, it's definitely a bit of a shock. And I think this person in particular also mentioned they were coming from another industry, and they were like, and they're quickly finding out that real estate is a super fast turnaround industry. And now in my business, where I have both a photo editor and a video editor, I can now promise my clients max 1 to 2 business day turnaround for videos. For photos, we do next day, which is again crazy, but that's why I had to find a solution to outsource my work, because I can't just meet those deadlines between everything that I'm doing, between shooting and then doing some editing in my business for other video and photo work, videos I create on this channel, the content that I make in my membership program. I can't edit everything. So once some more work started coming in consistently, I definitely found the need to hire an editor, and it's been working out great since. And if you're looking for an editor, definitely take a lot of time weeding a lot of these people out, especially when it comes to video, because that's going to be a representation of your work. And for me, it took a long time. I had to go through a lot of people and a lot of trials because they just weren't producing the quality of work that I wanted. And so when I finally found someone and they did a great job with my work and a lot of back and forth, it's been working out great since. So I think if you're just starting out, give yourself a little bit of extra time and maybe just let your clients know in advance, hey, it might be 1 or 2 or even 3 business days, depending on the type of property. Some realtors, if they're just on top of things and able to schedule things in advance, that you'll have that extra time. But for most regular or even lower end properties, the turnaround times are really fast because they're trying to list that property next day. So it's basically just trying to find a sweet spot between quality and turnaround time. And then if you get to the point where you're consistently getting a lot of work, maybe time to bring on an editor. And before continuing on with the rest of the video, my productivity shot just came in. I love when packaging is thought about. If you aren't familiar with Magic Mind, it is a productivity shot to help you focus more and stress less. Here's a quick breakdown of what is in Magic Mind. Basically, it's for more focus, for more energy, and to stress less. And honestly, speaking from experience, it really works. Magic Mind has been a sponsor for this channel for most of the course of this year. This is not my first time working with them, and I'm so happy that they've become a regular sponsor for the channel because I truly believe in this product. It really works anytime I have a long shoot day like I am right now, and I'm gonna have to dive into editing after this. It just works so well on keeping me focused. And the best part is, it tastes pretty good. And I'm sure if you're a photographer or videographer, you've done this before where you have a long shoot day and you stack up on coffee or energy drinks and it's not good for you, especially because it leaves you all jittery. And I don't know about you, but then I start to do my shoot and I get all jittery because I'm just over caffeinated and crash really hard later. And that's where Magic Mind comes into play because I've completely cut energy drinks or excessive coffee drinking because this gives me clarity to stay focused and get whatever work I need done. So this has become part of my daily routine. This right here is the 15-day pack, and they also have a 30-day pack, which is what I would recommend because then you can take one every day, Monday through Friday, take the weekends off, but just to stay focused and have steady, calm energy throughout your week. So honestly, if you're interested in picking up some Magic Mind, the link is in the description below, and I'll also save you 20% off your purchase using code Andrei RS20. Check it out, promise you won't be disappointed. And thanks so much to Magic Mind for sponsoring this video. Now back to it. Okay, question number 3. They said, this is super helpful. Thanks, man. Do you shoot and log in darker rooms with less natural light as well? I always have trouble exposing it properly in darker rooms. I end up with a lot of noise. So pretty common. I understand where they're coming from, but yes, I exclusively shoot and log on my camera on the R6 Mark II. I never switch over to the other color profiles because they're 8-bit color, and I exclusively shoot in the log because it's 10-bit, it's really flexible, and it looks great, more dynamic range and all that. Now, when it comes to a really dark room, which I run into a lot, I definitely know what you're talking about because it can be kind of scary to just bump your ISO up to like 6400, 12,800, and if your camera doesn't have good low light performance and you don't expose log properly, you can end up with a really noisy image where you would have been better off shooting in just the standard color profiles. So what I do when it comes to a really dark room, I try and do everything I can on my camera, and what I mean by that is I take off my circular polarizer filter because it does darken the image a bit. I switch from 4K 60 to 4K 24, that way my shutter goes from 1/125th to 150, letting in more light, and if that doesn't work, then I do have to just bump up the ISO. But here's the thing, I'd rather bump up the ISO much higher so then I can bring exposure down in editing versus trying to keep a lower ISO like 1600 or 3200 and then having to raise my exposure in editing. You never want to raise your exposure in editing, especially with log profiles coming out of these mirrorless cameras, because it's not going to look good. You're better off always exposing to the right before clipping your highlights and then reducing exposure. You're going to end up with a lot cleaner of an image, even shooting at higher ISOs, because when you bring it down, that noise is going to disappear a bit, in my experience. And so I usually end up with a great looking image, and it also depends on the low light performance of your camera. So on my camera, the Canon R6 Mark II, it is pretty good in low light. So I've even shot some rooms at 12,800 ISO, for example, those media rooms that have no windows or just really dark bedrooms, and I overexpose it, and then I can bring it down in editing and it looks a lot cleaner. So again, I would just experiment. Next time you're at your listing, try bumping up your ISO before you clip your highlights if there's no windows, and see if you get a clean image that way shooting log. Otherwise, you might be better off shooting in standard color profiles if your camera doesn't have the best low light performance. Question number 4, any tips for those of us still shooting in 8-bit 1080p? My current process is to correct white balance, then adjust exposure and hue versus saturation. Is there anything extra I should add in? So this is basically my process, but for log profiles. So it's really hard to get really good results doing all of this stuff in editing. So what I would do is do most of this on the shoot. So I would make sure if I'm shooting in 1080p, 8-bit color, standard profiles, that my exposure is accurate, my white balance is exactly where I want it to be, and then I can do those small color adjustments in editing. But if you're having to raise or drop your exposure in editing or correct your white balance on those 8-bit color profiles, they're not going to look really good. And you can do that while shooting to make sure that you get the best image possible and it's not going to fall apart in post. So whenever I would shoot on my 5D Mark IV, before that didn't have log or 10-bit color or anything like that, I would just spend extra time making sure that image basically that I'm seeing is pretty much good to go. The exposure is correct, best that it can be. The white balance is as accurate as it can be. Then in editing, I'm doing a little bit of fine-tuned touch-ups, but overall, because it is 8-bit color, I definitely didn't have the same flexibility like I do now, where I can grade the videos almost like I'm grading photos. And then another thing you can do is maximize your standard color profiles. For example, on Canon, I wouldn't shoot in standard, I would shoot in neutral. And then I found out that the 5D Mark IV had an HDR video mode shooting in 1080p 30 frames per second. So that was great because it gave me a lot more dynamic range. And then in the neutral color profile, I would bring down the contrast and the saturation, giving me a little bit more flexibility in post, and that result was a lot better than shooting in standard. So definitely just mess around with your color profiles, see what stuff you can reduce like contrast and saturation, see if you have any HDR modes or any modes that just can be better dynamic range wise, and go from there. Question number 5, are you always a lights off shooter? No, in fact I hardly am ever. Just now this year, last couple of months, I've just started dabbling with doing the lights off when it comes to real estate photo and video shoots. Up until this point in my career, 5 years plus in, I've only ever done lights on. I didn't even know that was a thing till I checked out other communities and saw other people doing that with some really cool results, and I see why people do that. But at the same time, if you do it for all your properties, I don't think it's a good idea. Some properties show better than others with the lights off. In my experience, I've only started doing it with those higher end modern luxury properties that have a ton of natural light, because that's your light source. You have to make sure the room is lit nicely, and if it's a really dark room and you have lights off, it's probably not going to look that great, and then you're going to end up with a noisier image or just not a good representation of that room or that property. And then again, back to log profiles, it does help, especially for real estate video, if you have more flexibility in editing, shooting in log, 10-bit color, where you can manipulate the colors and the exposure a little bit more if you're shooting with the lights off. And same for real estate photo. If it's a property that is more residential, doesn't have a lot of natural light, I'm probably going to keep the lights on. Because shooting in 5-bracket photos, you can definitely balance the tungsten lights a lot better. That looks better than having the lights off in weird dark spots. So again, depending on the property, I wouldn't exclusively do it, but I am definitely now trying it out more than before because I wasn't doing it at all. And sometimes I can't decide if it looks better with the lights on or off. I might do both. So if I'm shooting a living room and I'm like, man, this kind of looks better with the lights off, I'll take a clip with the lights on, turn the lights off, do it again, decide in editing. And also be aware that some realtors just expect the lights to be on. They might think it looks weird or kind of like, man, I really want to show what the property looks like with the lights on, and if you shot everything lights off, it would just be a big bummer to have to go back and do that property again just because of that. So in my opinion, maybe check with your realtor first and use your best judgment to think if it actually shows the property better with the lights off. Question number 6, I thought this one was funny. It was on one of my shorts and they just simply said, why use tripod? And it's funny, if you're not in this industry or you're coming from another one, it might seem kind of unnecessary to use a tripod this day and age where mirrorless cameras have in-body image stabilization, really good low light performance. So it's kind of like, why use a tripod? You could be a lot faster just hand holding it, shoot your real estate photos and be good to go. And I know other people and other companies that do that and it works out great for them. And still to this point, I still use a tripod, and here's why. I feel like you'll always get a much better composition. I feel like if you use a tripod, you're always going to get a better composition and a cleaner image. You can set up your shot, look at the live view, check the scene, double check, move things around, fine tune your verticals, and then you'll be able to take the best shot that you can. Not to say that you can't do that handheld, but it's not the same. You're hand holding it, you can't really go back to your scene, check the shot and all of that. So it's just much easier to miss something. And if your camera doesn't have image stabilization or it doesn't have the best low light performance and you have to bump up all your settings because you're doing it handheld, you might end up with a noisier, not so good quality image versus using a tripod where you can have much slower shutters, a lower ISO, and ensuring you get a clean image and a good composition. So personally, if you're just starting out, I would definitely recommend using a tripod because that's definitely going to teach you the right compositions, the right settings, and then after that, if you're seasoned and gain a good amount of experience, then maybe think about losing the tripod. I've done it before, and I even have a video on this, link it up here, where I went to a shoot that was about an hour away and I left my tripod. Just completely forgot it and I didn't want to reschedule, so I ended up shooting the whole listing on my camera handheld and it worked out. So depends, it might be for you, might not be for others, but I definitely recommend first trying a tripod before not even trying it at all. And lastly, question number 7 is more of just a bonus question that I wanted to talk about, which is where they asked, hey Andre, do you have a course? And no, Not yet. I definitely have plans of making a course, and it's something that's been on my to-do list for the past year, but I really wanted to set up my membership first, which I am so happy I did that because the feedback that I'm getting from members and the community we're building is incredible. If you haven't checked it out yet, head to the link in the description. It's simply $5 a month to join a private Discord group that now has over 60 members, everyone constantly talking about real estate, photo, video, business, anything else, answering each other's questions, waking up each day, diving in there and seeing all this good conversation for other people just starting out, learning new things is incredible. You also get a digital welcome pack with some real estate photo presets and LUTs that I use constantly, and an exclusive behind the scenes video where I bring you along to gigs, show you what I'm shooting, final results, things like that. Those videos never make it to the channel, just exclusive to members. So if you're interested, definitely check it out below. But now that the community's rolling and we're headed to the end of the year, I'm definitely going to be planning that course, and I wanted to get your take on this because my thing is I really want the course to be valuable but also affordable. I don't want to put out a course that's really expensive that most people might not be able to invest in it, because I understand in the beginning it's really hard to invest in the proper gear. So my idea was kind of to think about producing short form courses, basically courses that might be 2 to 4 hours long on certain subjects, and see if they're more valuable that way than packing a course full of 20 hours of content covering a ton of topics. That way maybe people might exclusively want certain things. Wanted to get your take on it. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now, but let me know down below what your thoughts are if you think that would be something that would be of value to you. So that's it for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, comment down your thoughts, subscribe if you haven't already. I would love for you guys to be part of the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Let me know what you think of this series. I love this answering your questions series that I started on the channel. If you want a specific question for me to answer in the next one, drop it down below and we'll get to it in the next episode. See ya!